And so I'm in I call this an Alice in Wonderland world.
Yeah, it is. Absolutely.
People say, but solar works for me. I can make it pay. But hold on here. You're being charged 3 times the amount already in the real world. So let's say your payback on solar is 8 years, yeah, with a battery. Just say, or 10 years with a battery. Well, in a real world, it'd be 30 years, longer than those things last. In fact, you'd have to replace a battery 3 times. So as soon as you go into the real world of costs, all these stupid things cease to exist because they're not viable. And that's a really important point to get across.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And as America's moving more and more back towards a realistic energy policy driven by Trump and Chris Wright, their energy costs are going further down. Economically, we are poorer than the poorest state in America.
Yes.
Because of the stupid policies pursued by our governments.
Yeah, the index I gave you is really interesting because America's up there, of course, high. We're 7 times worse than America. So no one would buy it, but no business would want to do that. On top of that, you enter an era where the government hates business. The government wants to penalize business of all sorts. So I'm in a position where I've got shares in a company I developed from scratch. And if I was going to pass them on to my children, but the tax on that would actually make it so my children couldn't afford to have it. Because the shares in a private small company can't be just sold, but they'd be hit with a huge bill. Which they can't afford. So the last thing they want is, I mean, that's how mad the world's become against anti-business.
This seems to be a deliberate policy to try to drive small and medium-sized enterprises out of business.
Correct.
And so that facility and that producer is absorbed by a massive organization that does deals at top level with government.
Correct.
Basically.
That's how the WEF work, isn't it? That's WEF story. And Starmer his speech today was delusional. I mean, he is delusional. I'll tell you what he's done. He's brought in up until him the least popular prime minister. He was way down there, and then he's brought in an advisor on women, thinking this will somehow rescue him, who can't even identify what a woman is. So he can't make it up, and he thinks he's going. And then he make the statement after the election to say he reckons he'd be there in 10 years. Now, he's delusional. I think, or hopefully, he'll be behind bars in 10 years. Him and all his World Economic Forum mates serving extremely long sentences. So, anyway, sorry, we've got a bit away from. I know we did.
So let's get back to our sort of agenda. The second question, because Paul asked it first. So, are we all agreed that high energy costs are now the single biggest threat to UK manufacturing?
Yes.
I think we've pretty much established that, haven't we?
By a mile.
All right, so now it's your turn, Paul, because that's the question after that.
So, I mean, we've kind of touched on this as well, Paul, but how much responsibility does government policy carry for the current situation?
Well, it wasn't just this government.
No.
We've had the Conservative and the ever since 2010, really. We've had a follow Blair somehow. Let's pretend to be Blair sort of government. And so we've had that. Now, and Theresa May actually didn't just close down the coal power stations like Germany did, because they've resurrected them. Today, 20% of German energy comes from coal. Yes. But we all know, she said, no, blow them up. So we blew them up, So you've got all that stupid thing there. But how much today? Well, they've accelerated it. In my latest video coming out late tonight, maybe, I've actually looked at what they've done on the what we call the inertia in the grid, and there's a safety level. Now, Miliband has lowered it every year. So whilst he's pushing the risk up and up and up, which this video shows completely, because the number of near misses we've had to blackouts are increasing and increasing, he's lowered the standard. And they're even discussing it now a super low standard. Because if he has to provide that inertia, which wind and solar don't have, if he has to provide it, it costs a fortune. and he has to hide the money. And just before this election, they took some of the subsidies from wind and solar and passed
Very
them
good general taxation.
So that's just a sleight of hand. You're still paying.
Yes, exactly.
And that was to make it look cheap. And then they've got the cheek to come on television and say, we've lowered energy prices. They are liars. Pure bloody, sorry language, they're liars.
Yeah.
And my blood pressure goes up. But I must be okay because I'm 81 and I've managed all this blood pressure for quite a long time, right? But it's hard to watch. It's hard to watch. So
it is.
Today
we've got people like yourself, Catherine Porter, David Turver, Alex Epstein, all over the world saying these policies are insane, and yet they still continue with them.
Totally. They don't just continue, they accelerate them. I mean, I may have mentioned it before, the carbon capture in North Wales. 800, they say, look, we're creating green jobs in North Wales, 800 jobs. But it's a cost of over £1 million per job. So even the tea lady costs us £1 million. Yes, it's £1 million per job. And what does it do? It buries the CO2. That's all it does. And every year it buries a lot of CO2, 4.5 million tons, which the rest of the world makes up for in 39.5 hours. That's a straightforward maths calculation. So we spend a whole year and 800 million taken away from taxation by good people and good businesses and good individuals, if you like. We take the money away, put it down a hole, and that work's gone in 39.5 hours. Where's the sense in that?
Well, but I mean, the other thing is we're talking at the moment about man-made carbon dioxide emissions, Paul. And the problem is that man-made emissions are only 3.5% of the annual total. 96.5% are natural ones we can't control. So what is the point?
I'm advising certain people at the moment behind the scenes on future policies, yes? And my advice is very much to instigate a program whereby for public information every month we publish the subsidy amount we put into renewables. And then we publish in a total. So we'll say, well, this month cost you 3 billion, but per household, it's this, just so you know, right? We did that every month as a government, yes? I think quickly we get the public to understand just what's happening, because it isn't just. I find that when I discuss the science, which I love doing, I mean, my model, which started in 1982, I've now extended it to 1900, and it fits all the way to 1900. And it even shows the big earthquakes properly and so on. So I haven't published all that yet, but I'd love to do the science work. But I concentrate these days on things that affect the public because it has more effect. So that's what I try to do. To answer your question, they are stupid on steroids, this government with this.
So coming back to specifically national British Steel now, because there's been an announcement about it, is nationalising British Steel a genuine solution, or is it just a stick in plaster delaying tactic?
Well, it doesn't even delay. If you nationalise it, it costs, number one, and secondly, all you've nationalised is an industry you've just guaranteed can't exist. You can't make that up. So it's not a stick in plaster. It appeals to a left-wing people who think that nationalising is the right way. I worked in my early days when I was doing all my climatology work and water resources work. I was in charge of water resource planning for Wales, for the whole of Wales. And I worked in a nationalised industry, the Welsh National Water Development Authority, it was called. And I can promise you, they covered up everything. And when I left, I was a whistleblower because I couldn't take the covering up, because besides doing my work, because I was very highly technical, they made me responsible for all the data for sewage, for pollution, everything. So my for fishing guides, everything. So I would monitor every single pollution incident. And we were 80% of the pollution incidents were caused by us. Yes, but they covered it up. When the Anti-Coastal Pollution League contacted me with a letter, and they said, didn't have emails in those days in the 70s. A letter to say, we've got these 3 outfalls of raw sewage, is it true, into the sea, I wrote back and said, well, they're true, but there's another 8 or 10. And I gave them the map of all the, you know. And the chief exec came to me, what are you doing? I said, well, it's public information. And it should be public anyway, because until we actually identify the problem, we won't get the solution. You don't get a solution to sewage. And when it was privatized, quite interesting, all that was covered up.
Yeah.
So the private industry, and believe me, there's some bad ones like Thames in that. Don't worry, they're all bad. But they also didn't understand the obligations they had on that side. Are you with me?
Yeah.
So they didn't, and the investors didn't understand it. So I watched their handover, and I couldn't believe it. You know how it was being done. It was all lies and deceit and cover-up. And I quickly, in my life, I became I became a helper for people. One bloke. This is the nationalised industry. One bloke had a little workshop. He did his woodworking across the road from his terraced house. Yes. And he got a water bill for it. So he wrote to them and said, no, there's no water supply there. So they sent an inspector along. And the inspector came to his cabin, little wood thing. Look, there's no water. To be nice, his wife brought them both a cup of tea over. Yes. Do you know what they said? You've transported water with the tea over to it, so we're going to maintain it. And they started legal proceedings. So I actually phoned them up because I knew the people. And I said, you have got 24 hours to get out of this. Otherwise, the TV headlines will be, you know, the £180 or whatever it was cup of tea. Yes. And so on. I promise you, you will be demolished. And I'd already done a number of TV appearances on things. And so they obviously withdrew it. But that's how mad a non-reactive, see, every NGO, every government organization works things around to what's best for it, not the customer.
Yes, exactly.
They don't see it as the customer.
No, very much. Yeah, I mean, I think it was Gandhi who said that customers aren't an imposition on the business; they're the reason for it.
Yes.
But in Britain now, NGOs have forgotten that.
Correct.
And customers are a problem. They're not the reason for their existence, which they should be.
Yes, that's right. And I've managed to stop quangos. I was on a quango representing Wales. And I was on a committee representing Wales on a project 2 or 3 years. And I closed the whole thing down by doing the work in 10 weeks that they were planning to do. And their feasibility on it cost just the feasibility cost 2.5 times more than me doing the work. So I sold the work then they came to me and said, oh, great, we've got this system now for the British water industry. And I said, well, Wales will sell it to you then. And they got upset with that, but we did sell it. We sold it to Sweden and Canada and so on. And I developed 10 weeks flat out. And so on, not because I'm clever, but because I can't I'll sit there, committees, watching all this waste of public money going on. They waste public money. We've got a front bench who've never been in business, never been near real work in anything. They've all been in public sort of messy about work. And they're experts at only one thing, spending other people's money. They
all seem to believe in MMT theory, magic money tree theory.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, the policies are driven by sixth form politics, aren't they? Because they've never grown up.
Yeah.
I think we've kind of answered this next question as well, which is are net zero policies making British industry uncompetitive internationally? Yes.
I mean, it isn't just if you take the gas. If you take the gas price, recently NESO announced that gas is driving the prices up, which is not true. Now, what I did was I did a simple paper, and it's just such common sense. I took today's price of gas in the Iran crisis, and I took it into what we call a CCC gas station to make the power, to make electricity.
Like a gas turbine,
all the standard prices. Yes, all the standard conversion costs. And it doesn't matter when you enter that, how expensive the gas is. It's the same cost to convert. You with me? The machine doesn't know it's more expensive or less expensive.
So
it comes out. Now that comes out at about £50 a megawatt hour. Actually, it comes out about 58 or 60 in the current crisis. But the forecast for gas price in the future is way coming down. Like before, it was about 40 pence per therm, not 74. And it's over at £1.10 or something at the moment. But gas is only one ingredient in it. Then you put it into the grid are all the standard charges. But what NESO had done is that 50 quid base for gas. They'd added and made it 118. So my video shows you all the taxes they put on, and then they added onto that to make it 130. Now the £130 gas, what happens is the auction comes in, the CFD prices for when the later ones don't matter, they're just fixed price. But the previous ones come in and they all have to be paid the highest price. That's how all the commodity markets work. So they get the price, then they get what we call the ROC certificate price. So they're getting 100, where even the later wind were getting, let's say, 120 quid, they're getting 180 quid. And now Miliband wants to say, oh, I'll give you CFDs. And they're saying, oh, no, we don't want CFDs. We're making a fortune. Are you with me? So the whole thing is mad. So they pretend on a price. So in other words, a totally artificial gas price is being used to escalate the price of things and then blame gas. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Well, it's lying. I mean, it's
lying.
Just downright lies.
Yeah. There's no answer.
No. And there's no common sense and there's no oversight, because the NESO is in effect, it's a company that I think it's in effect owned by the Secretary of State for Energy, by Miliband.
Yes.
So
but Secretary of State.
Whatever the studies they put out claiming to be objective, they're completely biased, because they're aimed at producing the conclusions that he wants to drive his ideological crusade to achieve net zero at whatever cost.
And if you take the national grid, which is a private business, by the way, right, they have got the total monopoly on the pylons. Only they are allowed to put up pylons. So they have a big preference to putting up lots of networks. And currently the cost of the network going up just for the green part, not for the maintenance of the existing grid. Because what we're doing is building another grid alongside the existing grid. It's £17 billion a year. 17 billion pounds a year just for the network charges. So and what I do as amateur, I looked at over a long time what its lifespan it is. It's quite long, 40 years. I build that into all the costs, and the costs become enormous.
But Paul, that 17 billion won't include the costs of once it comes to the end of the pylon chain and gets into the ordinary distribution grid at local level. Everything will have to be upgraded if you're going to be having electric cars, heat pumps, and all the rest of it. So you can probably at least double that 17 billion.
It's more. If you do that, if you've got to look at all the substations, because the wasted, if your substation can take X power, let's call it any number, let's call it 100, and all the houses in that estate, now share it, and they share 3 each or 4 each average, right? I'm just talking in units. Now, if you're going to put that demand up, you've got to change not just the substation, but you've got to dig up the entire road. You've got to dig up those drives to put in bigger power cables. It's impossible. And the University of Oxford engineering professors pointed out, we haven't even got the qualified chartered engineers in the electrical industry to do this. Yes, it's not there. It's children on. I can't. I'm useless at this because I can't explain enough how stupid this is. And children could do a better thing, because if children are playing a game doing electric grid and you say something, they listen to you and say, no, you should do it that way. Oh, yeah. But Miliband doesn't listen to anybody.
No. And that's the biggest problem.
Yeah.
So the answer to your question is, and by the way, it isn't just industry. It's everything. It's the quality of life and everything in Britain. Because if you imagine having 2/3 of your energy bill now refunded every month, I mean, that's a lot of money. It often accounts as much as a mortgage sort of thing. It really is significant. And on top of that, there's also all sorts of things in farming and so on with fertilizers. So he's put these enormous carbon prices on borders to import the stuff for fertilizers, and fertilizers has to have natural gas, and one of my policy things I'm trying to encourage people to do in the North Sea is bring it in. He also lies about how gas prices are international. They come in on the North Sea to us in pipes. There's no export facility.
No, absolutely.
If you take Malta, which I found as a good example, they live off gas. That's what their energy is. But because Malta's got no natural gas, it's just a bloody big rock, right? Because it's got no natural gas, it brings in LNG gas.
LNG. Yeah.
Gas is much more expensive, right? About 25% more expensive. But they end up charging 11 or 12 pence a kilowatt hour instead of ours. And by the way, ours is actually 35.8 pence. If you look at your bill, it's 27, 28. But then you've got your standing charge to put in, and then you've got the hidden tax thing that's hiding. So I've figured that out. So the true cost to us is 35.8. Malta are paying 11 and live off gas. That's proof that it works.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have huge amounts of gas sitting off our North Sea coast, adjoining Norway. The Norwegians have just started opening up more wells there because they are, especially at current prices, they're economic to run. And we're sitting twiddling our thumbs and buying either LNG or electricity or whatever from the Norwegians.
That's right. Well, what's even worse than that?
They're not going to do it for free. They're going to make a profit out of it. It's insane.
It's worse than that, because the latest gas fields they've found, the new gas fields they're taking the gas out of, probably come into our area as well.
Yes.
So they're sucking the level lower, if you like. And we could be doing it. They're emptying our gas as well. And then selling it to
at least the Norwegians are using it to bolster their sovereign wealth fund.
That's right.
Pensions. We just splaffed all of those resources up the wall, basically, over generations, over decades.
I've written a paper on it, actually, on how much is probably left there, and it's quite significant still. It won't reach the peak of the past, but it'll go on a long time, 20 odd years, and it's still quite significant. And the other thing is this: when we're setting the gas price each day, the price for everyone is set by the highest price in the market for the energy. Now, because we don't have enough of our own gas coming in on the pipelines, which is the cheapest gas, and we have to import LNG from the States, that LNG puts the price up, which puts the price up for even the natural gas. So everyone pays. And so the less LNG gas we have, the lower the price we pay. Are you with me? So even that is all wrong.
Yeah, it is a crazy system. So apart from our own net zero lunacy, to what extent are international climate commitments and Agenda 2030 having an effect on us and our energy cost structure, Paul?
Well, if you take, that's the net zero. 2030 is really the net zero thing. In Wales, with the new government, we've got Plaid Cymru, unfortunately, and they're setting it as 2040, I think, instead of 2030. But the IPCC last week, I think it was about last week, actually introduced this lower, though I've done away with what we call the 8.5, but that's technical for people. They've done away with the higher forecasts. Now, I'm going to say something now about these forecasts, science forecasts, which are all based on. They've got 100 different models with all different predictions of how the temperature rises in the future.
We might be able to put that in, because it's a John Christie graph.
That's right.
Which
So
shows the spread, the average, and then it shows the temperature, the satellite and balloon temperatures, which are much lower.
That's not my point. Yeah, it's true, but it's not my point. My point is 100 different models, right? Only one of which could be right if you think about it. You can't have, they're all different, so there's only one of it's going to be right. So we either know there's only two outcomes. We either know 100 are wrong or 99 are wrong.
Yes. What
do? They take an average of a known 99 minimum wrong calculations. That's not science. That's not how
there's only one that's right, and that's the Abdus Samatov model, which is the Russian model, and he doesn't even put carbon dioxide in as a forcing gas.
That's right, because I was giving a talk in a committee room in Parliament, actually, with Andrew Bridgen's lot. And there were 5 of us, I think, giving the talk. And I was before Monkton. I was before Viscount Monkton. But the only one that's even near to it is the Russian one.
Yes.
And then I handed over to him, and I didn't know what he was going to say. And he said, I can't believe this, because I'm the one who went to Russia and sat down with them and explained their mistake in the mathematics right at the beginning. And they said, come on, we've got it. and they changed it. So what Paul's just done is it's as if we planned it, you know. And I hadn't realised his story, that he's the one who helped produce the Russian one and put them on the right track.
Yeah.
It's still all over the place, but it's in the right direction, in the right events.
Yeah, and closest to real.
That's right. But people get lost when you go into the science. So my work is about, although I would love to do 100% of the science, but my work is 5% of the science when I give talks. And when I give talks, I only do tiny sections and stop for questions, because if people can get rid of their anxiety question or get rid of what puzzles them, and you can explain it, it leads on to other things, you know.
Yes.
So that's how that works, you know. And I've offered to train any party's councillors or anyone like that in a group, if they get a group together or they want to come on Zoom. I've offered to do a complete, maybe 1.5 hour program where they would understand net zero at the end of it and all the misconceptions put right. That's what I would do, you know. I've offered to do that, and I think one is taking me up, but I'm non-political on that, because all I'm interested in getting the world changed. I'm not interested in trying to do more than that.
Yeah. So we've decided that certainly net zero and Agenda 2030, all the rest of it, are having a deleterious effect. But with industries like steel, when they move overseas and our demand for steel remains the same, then we've only got one choice, presumably, which is to import the kind of steel that we need. And it will probably come from China or America or wherever, be shipped on a diesel vessel inordinate distances, and cost us more than if we just produce the steel using a decent Bessemer converter in Port Talbot or wherever.
Correct. Not only that, but it actually produces, as you say, more CO2. Although CO2's make more CO2 is okay, but on their own terms, it produces more CO2. But on their own terms, Drax doubles the amount of CO2 from coal. You know, I mean, you can't make it up. You know, why can't I'd love Miliband to sit with me in public for just 10 minutes would do me. Yeah. But they won't, you see. They all shy away. And they all pretend this committee, this. We've now even evolved, as my latest video is going to show, management of the grid over to the public. Because to get around the crisis, to stop a blackout, we're saying, oh, can we pay you this much to take this energy? Or, you know, please shut down demand. Are you with me? Yeah. And we'll pay you not to have it. Yeah. And so on. Well, that's not you controlling the grid. That's handing responsibility out. And they've done all these experiments with the public. You know, let's pay you between this hour and this hour, you know, to use the energy, and we'll pay you to use it. It won't be any cost. We'll give you that.
Then not to use it at peak times, but that's ridiculous. In bloody February, you know, you need heating, and you want the amount of heating that you want at the time you want it, not 4 hours ago or 4 hours later.
Yeah, those experiments have actually shown that the public demands of way. The first time it's a novelty, but they can't rely on that.
No,
but I've gone into what I've done in my latest video. I've gone through a bit by bit in a control room of going into a blackout. And what it is these inverters on the roofs of houses. There's two types, but the biggest ones, the old ones, actually just cut off at a certain point. Now, when they cut off, what would happen? And even if they're not connected to the grid, they would see a demand rise, because now that's not there. Are you with me? Suddenly, bang, that demand's gone, and it's big. It's big, and that causes a wobble. And you're on a tightrope now trying to wobble. And then other things start to happen. And I've taken you through on 8 levels. I've taken you through 8 different step by step to a blackout in the latest video. And I've done it with images and all sorts of things. That's what's taking me the time. And so I could come on and make a video for a half-an-hour video. You could cover this in 8 minutes just talking, but it doesn't achieve what I want to achieve. And if I can get an 11-year-old young lad or girl to understand it, I'm happy.
But the problem is that we've already seen the Iberian grid collapse because they were running almost totally on renewables,
Correct.
And then they had a sudden weather change, and that
was
trip.
What happened was a trip. I think one of the things,
To the trip ultimately, I think,
close to spike, which they carried. It carried on through the whole of Portugal. It carried on into France a bit, but France stopped it because France established the nuclear base with the inertia.
Yeah,
so when
exactly. But they don't. The politicians don't seem to understand just how important it is to have a reliable level of generation and inertia to keep the grid going. And the more renewables you put onto the grid, the more unreliable your system becomes, because you cannot create the level of inertia that comes with conventional nuclear and combined cycle gas turbine generation.
No, you can't. And Miliband, of course, as I've said, has lowered the thresholds of, we have a limit, we need this much inertia. And he's narrowed it and narrowed it and narrowed it. So at the same time, I've done the graph of the incidence rising as we're getting closer. So there's a graph going up towards blackout, right? And on the latest video. And then I've done the step downs to how he's hiding it, because the cost of maintaining that, the cushion, is wrong. And of course, in 2005, on January the 8th, which Catherine Porter highlighted when she went through the data, and she found that it was down to 580 megawatts, which is nothing, right? They lied, and they used the words to lie. They said, "Oh no, we're over 3 gigawatts afterwards." Well, that was afterwards. I'm talking about when it was there. And so I've done a complete idiot's guide, step by step, through what happened. And what happens? This switches off, and then suddenly, if that switches off, that lowers the frequency. If that demand switches off, that lowers the frequency. Then the other type of inverters, the more modern ones, say, "Oh, well, we got lower inverter, we can go up now." And one goes up, one goes down, and you start to get signals through to the network. And once those signals in the network start going out, you get lots of equipment saying, "Sorry, it's not safe. I'm switching off. I don't want to be damaged."
Cascading.
And you get a cascade, which is what happened. It's the cascade that happened in Spain from a tiny little thing. And so they say, "Oh, it's not to do with inertia." I know. Well, in actual fact, look at the report. It is. Otherwise, how would it cascade? Yeah.
Yes.
So I mean, there's no doubt about it. I think it's more probable now, between now and 2030, we're going to have blackout, and when we have it, it's going to be a national thing. And I've gone on many times on videos pointing this out, as Catherine has and other people have, and they're going to be accountable. I want it on record. They're going to be accountable for all those deaths.
Absolutely, they should be, and they should be accountable for the lives that will be lost, as they found in Spain. The people who are reliant on the grid for permanent power supply of power, they'll be wiped out. They'll just die.
Yes.
Everybody who's on sort of an iron, basically what was an iron lung, that sort of thing. They've had it. No, there's no power. They're dead.
No, on a massive scale compared to, I mean, Spain, I think 9 people died one way or the other in Spain as a result. But everything goes. Traffic lights go.
Yeah, exactly.
Goes.
Street lights.
Pardon? Street lights.
Yeah.
Everything goes. Our whole civilization since 1850 is built on fossil fuel energy. Right?
Yes.
I'm all for nuclear if we can drop the 7,000 regulations. But even that's been done in warfare. They're putting nuclear into warfare.
Everything
3 to 4 times the cost of what it should be.
Everything that's been done in the last few decades has actually compromised our ability to produce cheap, dispatchable, reliable, low-cost energy.
Yes.
And our economy's been spiraling down the plug hole ever since.
Correct. And dispatchable simply means for everyone that dispatchable energy is energy you can say, "I want this much," and you get it. That's right. But you can't say tomorrow, you can't say in the next hour, "I want this much wind or solar," because you won't. The solar is put in the worst time of day. It's put in the middle of the day when that's the lowest demand.
Yes.
Right? So we're having to get everything out of the way now. As solar is growing and doubling, more than doubling, we're having to move everything out of the way, a huge cost. It's madness.
Yes, it is absolutely. And then, of course, if we get a Dunkelflauser in the winter, then there's no wind, there's no sun, and there's no renewable generation, and then we're totally reliable on combined cycle gas turbine, whatever nuclear we've got, and interconnectors into Europe. And of course, the Norwegians are starting to get very shirty about the interconnectors with, I think it's Denmark and ourselves, because it's actually driving up their own energy prices because of our stupid energy policies.
Because we're paying a high price to grab their energy as priority, and that's putting their price up. And exactly. Last election, it was a big political issue, and they've warned us. And Norway's very friendly to us. You know, we saved them in the Second World War, as it were. So they're friendly to us. And as friends are saying, look, you can't keep doing this. And don't forget, it's a Dunkelflaut, which is low wind or the high pressure all over Europe, and it's in the winter, one of those cold nights in the winter at 7 o'clock in the evening. Everybody wants the energy.
Yes, exactly.
I mean, recently we paid what was it, 9,000 odd pounds per megawatt for energy to grab it in, just to keep us going, to stop London going. That was a few years back, not long ago, and so on. And then he says, we want energy independence, and he's depending on interconnectors. And good. It's madness.
It doesn't. It's not, certainly not joined up thinking. I mean, all of this it's clear that our domestic infrastructure, power infrastructure, is not as resilient as it needs to be, and the current policies are actually going in the wrong direction and making it less resilient, not more. So if you were somebody tomorrow said, right, Paul Burgess, you are now our advisor to government on energy generation, what would be the first thing you would do?
The first thing I would do is announce, I could straight off, I'd announce that the whole net zero thing is nonsense. You've all been fooled. That's number one. Number two, I would say, right, I am going to act immediately to instigate the fastest way I can get dispatchable energy. Right, it's the fastest way. And I believe at the moment, given the 8-year wait on gas turbines, I'd look at old aeroplane jet engines being used, because that's a possibility. Maybe get, but I'd almost be certain looking at coal. And I do emergency planning regulations to get coal power in, which would be welcomed in places like Wales, by the way, and to get coal power in, because I could get that in within 3 or 4 years. So I do that. I would remove all the regulations over and above the international safety regulations for nuclear. I would immediately, on the old, there's two types of renewable subsidy. One is the old ROC system, which is very expensive. And the new one, the CFD, contracts with a difference, is a fixed price. Forget the complex name. It's a contract price. That's hard with it. He's locking in 20-year contracts. But the other one is a statutory requirement. So it's not a contract. We don't have a contract with about 50% of the energy. We have a statutory requirement, which we can change by statute. So a minister could just change it, right? That would cause, I looked into this, that would cause a reaction under the European human rights, saying, but the expectancy was. But I'd have done away with the Human Rights Act, right? Necessary, and that would have made it very difficult to counter in the courts. Unnecessary, I would pass legislation immediately to say, no, that's it. The rule is that's going. Now, I couldn't remove it immediately. We may need it because we've got to increase that blinking baseline. We've got to get that going. I would also point out the stupidity of what we've done with nuclear in Anglesey, which is instead of going for an easy, quick to install nuclear system from America, the Westinghouse system, we went for Rolls-Royce, who haven't even developed one before. I'm not against Rolls-Royce, but it's not their business. Their business was high uranium, 90% plus purity on submarines. It's a totally different system. So they've never designed one. And by then people say, but it's British. Well, actually, only 25% of that cost is the reactors, only 25%. The rest is other things, like the steam turbines from Siemens.
I think the Westinghouse that you mentioned, the Koreans have a knockoff version of that, which is even cheaper than Westinghouse, which apparently they're not allowed to use in Europe at the moment, but I'm sure there will be wriggle room if we talk to the Yanks about that.
Well, it isn't the Yanks. If you take the Korean one, they've made nuclear into a factory produced SMR, right?
Mm-hmm.
They charge, by the way, they're about 14. My latest paper that you published the link to before will be published at the end, the energy index. But it gives the price per kilowatt hour for all the different countries. I think they charge about 14 or 15p, which is still less than half of what we cost us. We're purely nuclear. Now, I'm not saying if we put gas in, we'd be down to 10, 11p. But I'm not saying we have a pure gas system. I'm just saying that's an exercise to show you how extreme this is, right?
Yes.
But if we put nuclear in, which I'm all for, including it, once we've removed the regulations, you're actually safer. You're actually worse in your car, more exposed in your home and your car to radiation than you are when you get inside the nuclear plants under our rules, which is
yeah.
And the cost of that can be measured in billions and delay. And we haven't got the room for delay. So I'd be encouraging all these things as fast as possible. Then there's the 2022 Act of Parliament, which limits renewable profits to about £81 a megawatt hour at the moment. Yeah. And they can impose that. They don't very much. They've threatened it, but they can impose that on the renewables. And that expires in 27. But we could, if I was in today, I would immediately extend that. Yeah. And so I would actually have the power then to take their profits away. So I would literally control, as we died out with the nuclear, as we died out with the solar and the wind, I would control the thing down, right? But I would also publish every month how much we're paying. I would show up the culprits, show up the prices, not fool the public, and tell them the entire truth, right?
Yes.
And I also expose myself to ridicule or to examination by independent experts and committees and so on, and the public and so on. So it'd be totally free speech in the open, right? No covering up, right? And none of this, you're right wing and therefore, or left wing and we can't talk to you. It doesn't matter what blinking wing you're in. What matters, the evidence you bring. Sorry, that was my little speech on the right.
I would add to what you've already started with. The first thing I would do would be to repeal the European Communities Act of 1972, because that just destroys all of the European regulation that follows on that we've adopted. And I would repeal the Climate Change Act of 2008.
All of those would be, I guess.
So it would certainly be an interesting time. There'd be a lot of human rights lawyers sort of pulling their hair out in huge chunks. But because my hair in chunks, I should reciprocate, give them the opportunity.
Sorry. Parliament is sovereign, so Parliament can act and stop it. Parliament can stop it. That's the problem with CFDs, is their contracts for the fixed price. So if you stop those, they go to the courts. That's very difficult. Now, if Parliament stop that, you've got a problem, because then you're disowning contracts, which isn't good for Britain.
Of course,
Another way. Another way is to say, right, there's the new Act, Environment Act, the new Environment Act, and we're going to enforce that all the wind companies and solar companies, but mainly wind, will put a fund up to reinstate back to nature what was there before. But you've got to have that as a fund. At the moment, it's guaranteed sometimes by the parent company, but that's only as long as the parent company lasts. They may not be there. A lot of things going on there. So I'd say, no, it's got to be an independent financial institution, like a major bank or something, has got to guarantee the money, or you've got to create the fund. You've got to put it aside. And that would put an imposition on them. I'd use the Act, that 2022 Act, to take the profits away. So you can do a number of things. So the first block is easier to control, the ROC. The second block is the number of combinations. I'd also have a whole pile of bird volunteers, free of charge, have a right of access to all the wind farms to count the number of dead birds. And I would use existing legislation, which is £5,000 for a bat and unlimited fines for the birds, right? And I would prosecute them, right? For all the dead birds. But I would also make that very public. So I would expose all the things that are wrong as well. That's very important, because you've got to carry the public with you.
And the other thing is, you mentioned, remediation of the sites. Well, nobody can remediate these blasted wind turbines. And apparently, not only are the problems with the glass GRP that's in there, they're also finding some of them have got asbestos in them.
Correct.
In the turbines. And they're all being filled.
That's right. You can't make this up. But these people pretend to be green and let's all be floral and green. I am an environmentalist. I mean, I've been interested in. I'm a chartered environmental engineer besides anything else, right?
Yeah.
Not just a water resources, I'm chartered environment. I've been there all my life, but it's got to be the real world. It's got to be the true world. And so I don't want the beds of sea when you cut off the wind turbines to be having spikes sticking up, so we make them unfishable, for example, and so on. It's got to be total removal, and the funds have got to be there for it, because I've done papers on this. One of my best viewed papers was exposing the financial terrible state of the wind farm companies like Ørsted. And they're in danger because what's happened is, and this has been highlighted by Professor Hughes from Edinburgh University, and he exposed this. He went into the accounts of all the wind farm companies, and he found out that the length of life is nothing like what they're talking about.
No.
For offshore, it's 12 years before the maintenance costs exceed the income, and onshore, it's 15 years, right? So it's a scam. It's a Ponzi scheme. So the people have their fingers burned now, right? They don't want to reinvest, and that's why the share prices of all these companies like Ørsted, etc., have collapsed, and they've collapsed because they're a prediction of future profits, and it gets harder and harder to get the money in.
Yeah. There's a bit. I've seen. There's a program called Landman, which is American program, and it's Billy Bob Thornton, I think, who plays the main character, and he's got one of these, and a sort of real eco-zealot lawyer with him, and he takes her to one of these wind turbines, and he tells her how much cement is in the structure underground, and the plastic that's in the turbines, and the oil that lubricates them, and the fact that they don't last anywhere near as long as they're supposed to. And he basically says, this is actually consuming more energy to make it than it's actually generating usefully, so they're a waste of time. And it describes just as environmental window dressing.
The trouble is, part of what he said wasn't true, part was. But the glass in the blades is oil, I actually argued once on GB News. I had a Stop Oil activist against me. And I handed him the Table 1212, page 1856 IPCC report, which showed you the extreme weather. No, we're not claiming any more extreme weather in this, and this. And he screwed it up and threw it at the camera. And when we finished that with Nana Nakua, when we finished the show, she always had a photograph of the people with her. Let's take a photograph for her Facebook. And no, I don't want to be photographed with either of you. And then I'm going to. It's in a bit of an underground bunker, one of the studios. And when you walk out, you walk into a car park, a multi-story car park. And so as you walk in through the labyrinth to get out, he said, "Which way are you going to go out?" And I said, "I'm going to go up the stairs straight out." And he said, "Well, I'll take the long route because I don't want to walk with you." And I'm thinking, and he argued we could have zero oil and zero fossil fuels within the next 3.5 years. And I said to him, you're sitting, that's where he argued, and you're sitting there in clothes made from those things. You'd be nude sitting there without them, and so on. Your glasses, right? Your telephone, by the way, and so on. Medicine, the medicine alone.
Absolutely.
I don't even understand how much medicine is based on.
Yeah, we argue this all the time.
And so, but and at the moment we're still, aren't we? In 2030, you won't be able to legally buy a new diesel or petrol car.
Yeah, I think they'll have to walk back on that.
They're going to have to. But everything is. The trouble is, it's like a tide of damage being pushed forward. Look what they've done to the car industry everywhere in Europe.
Destroyed it
globally.
Well, globally,
and all they've done is export all of the demand now to effectively to China to sell cars made using coal power predominantly.
Yes. I know, but then that's what happens when you have really stupid people in charge. And Starmer is, he's a piece of wood that has a mouth that talks.
It reminds me of when I was in secondary school. They started bringing in computing as a subject.
Yeah.
BBC Model B came out, and we had one per
It
classroom.
was a great computer, by the way.
It was a big computer, but and you could do like 8 different colours on it. Woohoo! 20 go to 10. But what do? They don't bring in an expert to teach you. Our PE teacher became our computer science teacher as well. And that's what happens in politics.
Yeah.
You don't have an expert running a department. You have somebody that they move into that position that has got no right to be there. Ed Miliband being a case in point.
Yeah.
If the likes of you were there, Paul, it would be a different story altogether.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But it's not
funny because
fight against though. It's a cadre of civil servants as well who are feeding him crap information.
Yeah,
that's right. When I worked in Cornwall River Authority as water resource engineer, that was the start of my career. I used to go down to Truro, to the Cornwall County Council computer, and take over the entire weekend. So from 5 o'clock Friday, right the way through, right, to do my models. And I actually didn't need the income, but I was so incensed by the way computer programming was taught that I did a night school class. And the very first thing I did in the night school class was all Model Bs, by the way. And the very first thing I did in the night school class was I asked them to press a button and the computer went bang as best I could. And I said, that's the worst you're going to have. It's not going to hurt you. And I said, by the end of this first 2 hours, you'll have written your first program. No way. But I taught them practically how to do it. And I had them all going. And at the end of the course, they all developed their own programs. Every one of them had their own programs going. So a bloke on who owned a garage wanted to look at the mix of
my experience started even before that. We were using punch cards and Fortran and Algol.
Yes.
The Oxford computer.
Punch cards is what I was using.
Punch cards to the program and it would crash, and then you have to look through and work out which was the one card that was.
I did all my modelling with punch cards. When I took it down to Truro, they converted it to punch tape. The punch tape went in, and I ran it for the weekend. But what happened then was the Cornwall County Council person in charge of that computer, who was their finance director, their finance man, tried to stop me teaching because I wasn't qualified in George. What the hell is George? It's the operating system for the Cornwall County, which I don't need to know. I just need to run the program, my software. I don't need to know the setup of the thing. But his ignorance was so extreme, and he was in charge of it.
Sounds familiar. The words Ed and Miliband come to mind.
There we go.
I think it's clear there's an awful lot of politicians and civil servants promoted beyond the limit of their incompetence.
Almost every one.
Yeah.
In the case of Labour, every one.
Yeah. Sadly.
And in the case of the Greens, you have an inverse relationship. Of the least qualified. Most
power. Anyway, I think we've well covered the subjects that we've been talking about, so it's probably a good place to wrap this episode up. But it's been very enjoyable again, Paul, and I'm sure we'll invite you back fairly soon, and we'll chew the cud some more over the current affairs and what's going on. But thanks, very interesting to talk to you again.
Fine, Brian. It's very, very nice to have someone who's knowledgeable as well. It makes it so much easier to have someone knowledgeable like yourself.
Brian's very like-minded.
Absolutely. But we should try and invite some, less, I don't know, Dale Vince or somebody to come on the program with us and argue his corner. But I'd love to do it.
We could try it.
You get anyone you like. I don't
let them try.
Yeah.
Then you can go your separate ways to the car park after that.
Anyway, it's an idea for the future.
It is. Okay.
Right, guys. Much appreciated. Thanks, Paul, again, as last time.
Okay, bye.